Imagine a single document that could change the course of history, redraw borders, and reshape nations. This isn't a work of fiction, but a stark reality of the Treaty of Tordesillas. In the late 15th century, a world unknown to Europe was being unveiled by daring explorers. The year was 1494, just 2 years after Christopher Columbus had set foot on the New World. Spain and Portugal, two maritime powerhouses of the time, were at the forefront of these explorations. But as more lands were discovered, the question of who owned what became a contentious issue. This led to the signing of the Treaty of Tordesillas. A papal agreement brokered by Pope Alexander VI, this treaty drew an imaginary line west of the Cape Verde Islands. Lands to the east of this line would belong to Portugal, while those to the west would be Spain's. At first glance, this might seem like a simple division of newfound territories. But the repercussions of this treaty were far-reaching. The majority of the New World, including what is now Latin America, fell into the Spanish sphere. Only Brazil ended up in the Portuguese domain due to its eastern protrusion. This division sowed the seeds of the Latin America we know today. The Spanish and Portuguese languages, cultures, and religions took root in these territories, influencing their development for centuries to come. The demographics of these regions were forever changed, and the echoes of this treaty can still be heard in the cultural, political, and social fabric of these countries. It's fascinating, isn't it, that a simple piece of parchment, signed over 5 centuries ago, could dictate the borders and identities of nations half a world away. This goes to show the power of treaties, not just as legal documents, but as tools that have the potential to shape the world. This treaty, inked over 5 centuries ago, continues to shape our world in ways we might not even realize. Sometimes a treaty can provoke a revolution. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1763, did just that. This historic agreement marked the end of the French and Indian War, a 7-year conflict on American soil that was part of the larger global 7 Years' War. France, defeated and drained of resources, ceded vast territories in North America to Britain, changing the balance of power on the continent. But the victory was a double-edged sword for Britain. The war had been expensive, and the newly acquired territories were difficult to manage. To recoup some of the war costs, Britain imposed new taxes on its American colonies, sparking a wave of discontent. The Stamp Act of 1765, for instance, required colonists to pay a tax on every piece of printed paper they used. This was followed by the Townshend Acts in 1767, introducing taxes on glass, lead, paints, paper, and tea. These measures were met with resistance and resentment. The slogan, "No taxation without representation," echoed through the streets and meeting halls, symbolizing the colonists' frustrations. The situation escalated over the next decade, leading to events like the Boston Massacre in 1770 and the Boston Tea Party in 1773. The series of punitive laws passed by the British Parliament in response, known as the Intolerable Acts, further inflamed the conflict. The fuse was lit, and the explosion was inevitable. In 1775, the American Revolutionary War began, a direct result of the escalating tensions between Britain and its American colonies. And in 1776, the American colonies declared their independence from Britain, a momentous event that transformed the world. So, in a twist of historic irony, the Treaty of Paris of 1763, designed to bring peace and stability, ended up sparking a revolution. It set the stage for the birth of a new nation, the United States of America, and changed the course of history. The Treaty of Paris, intended to end a war, inadvertently sowed the seeds for another. Again, what if a treaty aimed at peace instead ignited a global conflict? That's the story of the Treaty of Versailles. In the aftermath of the First World War, the victorious powers convened in Versailles, France, to pen a peace treaty. The year was 1919, and the world was reeling from a conflict of unprecedented scale. The leaders of the Allies, brimming with a desire for justice and reparation, drafted a treaty that was intended to secure peace and prevent future wars. But the Treaty of Versailles, as it was named, was destined to do the opposite. The treaty's primary aim was to hold Germany accountable for the war and its devastating consequences. It enforced crippling financial reparations on the German nation, diminished its military capabilities, and stripped it of territories, both at home and abroad. These harsh terms were intended to keep Germany in check, but they instead fostered resentment and anger among the German people. The punitive measures of the treaty pushed Germany into economic catastrophe, causing extreme hardship for its citizens. The humiliation of defeat and the perceived injustice of the treaty gave rise to a potent cocktail of nationalism and revenge. This volatile brew was skillfully exploited by a rising political force, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, known to most of us as the Nazis. At the helm was a charismatic and ruthless leader, Adolf Hitler, who used the simmering discontent to fuel his rise to power. He promised to restore Germany's dignity and might, to reject the Treaty of Versailles, and to seek retribution against the nations that had imposed it. The rest, as they say, is history. World War II, the most devastating conflict in human history, was ignited. Over 70 million lives were lost, cities were reduced to rubble, and the world was forever changed. The seeds of this catastrophic war were sown in the harsh soil of the Treaty of Versailles. In an ironic twist of fate, the Treaty of Versailles, designed to secure peace, instead lit the fuse for another devastating world war. A treaty can also divide a continent, as the Potsdam Agreement did in 1945. This powerful statement takes us back to the aftermath of World War II, when the fate of a war-ravaged Europe was being decided. Let's delve into the historic Potsdam Agreement, a treaty that would divide a continent into Eastern and Western blocs, setting the stage for one of the tensest periods in modern history, the Cold War. In the summer of 1945, three world leaders, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, Winston Churchill of Britain, and Harry Truman of the United States, convened in the German city of Potsdam. Their goal? To negotiate terms for the end of World War II and to shape the future of Europe. The Potsdam Agreement was a symbol of post-war cooperation. It represented the Allies' commitment to work together to rebuild a continent shattered by the most devastating war in human history. But beneath this veneer of unity, deep ideological differences were emerging. The agreement called for the demilitarization and denazification of Germany, the payment of reparations, and the prosecution of war criminals. But it also led to the division of Germany and Berlin into 4 occupied zones, each controlled by one of the Allies: Britain, France, the United States, and the Soviet Union. This division was meant to be temporary, a necessary measure to ensure stability and peace. But it became a permanent fixture, symbolizing the ideological divide between the capitalist West and the communist East. This split was not confined to Germany alone. It extended across Europe, dividing it into 2 distinct blocs: the Western Bloc, aligned with the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, aligned with the Soviet Union. This division set the stage for the Cold War, a tense and dangerous period of geopolitical rivalry between the West and the East that lasted for over 4 decades. Despite being a treaty of cooperation, the Potsdam Agreement inadvertently created a fault line that would shape the world for years to come. The Potsdam Agreement, a symbol of post-war cooperation, ultimately set the stage for the long and tense Cold War. This serves as a stark reminder of how a single treaty can have far-reaching and long-lasting consequences that reverberate through history. A treaty can also tackle global issues, like the Paris Agreement did for climate change. This crucial agreement, signed in 2016, represented a pivotal moment in the history of our planet. It was a beacon of hope in an increasingly warming world, a sign that countries could put aside their differences and unite under a common cause. The Paris Agreement, named after the city where it was adopted, was a response to the urgent and existential threat of global warming. It sought to limit the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This was no small feat, considering the historical reliance of many economies on fossil fuels. This treaty didn't just set temperature targets, it also laid out a roadmap for achieving them. It called upon nations to reach peak greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible, and to achieve a balance between sources and sinks of these gases in the second half of this century. It also emphasized the need for financial support and technology transfer to developing countries, recognizing the shared but differentiated responsibilities in the fight against climate change. The Paris Agreement wasn't perfect. It faced criticism for its non-binding nature and the lack of enforcement mechanisms. Some pointed out that even if all countries met their pledges, it wouldn't be enough to keep global warming below the 2 degrees Celsius threshold. But despite these shortcomings, it was a step in the right direction, a sign that the world was finally waking up to the reality of climate change. This treaty proved that international cooperation was not just possible, but necessary in the fight against global warming. It showed that when faced with a common threat, nations could come together and commit to a shared vision for a sustainable future. The Paris Agreement, a testament to international cooperation, continues to shape our ongoing battle against climate change. It's a reminder that treaties are not just about resolving conflicts or dividing territories. They can also help us unite and take collective action to save our planet. As we've seen, treaties have the power to shape our world in profound and lasting ways. We've journeyed through the corridors of time, witnessing how these solemn pacts, inked on paper, have left indelible imprints on the canvas of history. Take, for instance, the treaty that shaped the modern world, the Treaty of Westphalia. It not only ended the 30 Years' War, but it also laid the groundwork for the concept of national sovereignty, a principle that continues to dictate international relations to this day. Then we examined the Treaty of Paris, a pact that spurred American independence. It was a catalyst that ignited the spark of revolution, leading to the birth of a nation that has since become a dominant force on the global stage. Next, we delved into the Treaty of Versailles, the treaty that ignited a world war. By imposing harsh reparations on Germany after World War I, it sowed the seeds of resentment that would eventually blossom into the horrors of World War II. We also studied the Treaty of Tordesillas, the treaty that divided a continent. It split the New World between Spain and Portugal, shaping Latin America's cultural and linguistic landscape for centuries to come. And finally, we explored the Paris Agreement, the treaty that changed the climate. This pact, signed by nearly every nation on Earth, marked a global commitment to combat climate change, a challenge that threatens our very existence on this planet. Each of these treaties, in their own unique way, has left a lasting legacy. Some have redrafted the world map, others have sparked revolutions, and a few have even ignited wars. Yet they have also been instrumental in fostering peace, promoting cooperation, and combating global issues. From redrawing borders to sparking revolutions, from igniting wars to combating global issues, treaties continue to write the story of our world. As we look to the future, treaties will undoubtedly continue to play a crucial role. They are the tools we have to grapple with the global challenges ahead of us. Take climate change, for example. As we've seen, treaties have the potential to guide nations towards sustainable practices, helping us to collectively care for our planet. And in the digital realm, treaties can provide a framework for cooperation and conflict resolution as we navigate the complex world of cyber warfare. They may help us to better define digital borders and protect the integrity of our online spaces. Furthermore, as we venture further into space, treaties will be instrumental in determining how we explore, share, and protect these new frontiers. They will set the terms of our cosmic diplomacy, shaping how humanity interacts with the vast expanse beyond our world. In the grand scheme of history, every signature on a treaty is a pen stroke on the canvas of our shared future.